the hostility that's being shown towards federal workers is going to have this chilling effect on federally funded research, because people won't take on long-term ambitious projects if they don't know that the money's going to be there in a couple of years.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We have a caller on the line, and I have been soliciting calls from federal workers. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. 844-899-8857 is the number. Please do call in if you're a federal worker. I would love to hear how this kind of stuff is affecting you. How is the Trump administration affecting you personally? How is it affecting your ability to do work? How is it affecting your ability to execute the mission? How is it going to affect the American people who are going to see disruption in the services or the goods that you provide, et cetera, et cetera? How is your union reacting to this? How are your politicians reacting to this? How is your community reacting to this? Any and all of those sorts of things, I want to hear it from federal employees. 844-899-8857. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, and the lines are open. And we do have a caller on the line from a 301 area code. 301 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Jacob. My name is Matt Brown. I'm the recording secretary of NIH Fellows United, UAW Local 2750. We represent about 5,000 unionized researchers at NIH.
Fantastic, Matt. I'm so glad that you called in. And it's so funny that I was just talking about the science stuff. And somebody from the National Institute of Health calls in. What do you make, and this is before we get into any of this other stuff, but what do you make of it when people go around and cite these top lines of things without without knowing anything, frankly, like the shrimp on a treadmill, right? Like I just spent 5 seconds on Google and saw that, oh, this was only a very small part of a general study about seafood quality or about the effects of water quality on seafood. That seems like a reasonable thing to study. Seems like something that we would want to know. What do you make of folks who do things like that?
Yeah, well, it's frustrating because obviously, like you pointed out, it's bad faith reading of the science that we do every day. And we work really hard. Our jobs are complicated. It's perhaps unsurprisingly not easy to try to solve things like Alzheimer's, heart disease, kidney disease, and diabetes. And all of those problems are made up of many, many, many smaller problems. And if you take those smaller problems and break them up and give them the least charitable reading possible, then yeah, they're probably going to sound a little ridiculous to people. And it's right. It can feel pretty insulting when that's done, because we put our lives into this kind of research, and to have it described in these very uncharitable ways is it doesn't feel great.
Yeah, and I have been following the NIH campaign at the UAW, and there's also this kind of misunderstanding that folks who work for the National Institute of Health make just a ridiculous amount of money. Would you mind telling people how much fellows at the National Institute of Health make?
It is not a ridiculous amount of money, I'll have you know. Our post-baccalaureate and predoctoral fellows are somewhere in the 50K range, and I myself am a postdoctoral researcher. That means that I worked hard through my bachelor's degree, 2 years of being a lab technician, and then 6 years of a PhD, and I pull in around 70K a year, and that's
wow.
That's I don't consider that extravagant, especially living here in the DC area. If you look at home prices and rent prices around Bethesda, where many of us work, 50K is barely enough to get by, and 70K, especially if you're in a position like a lot of postdoctoral fellows are, where they're trying to support families, it's certainly not extravagant.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Right. Yeah. $70,000 a year for a PhD holder. is, I mean, that is not a lot of money, especially like you said, if you're living in the DMV area. So, the original solicitation of the calls was just generally, how is all of this? How is it affecting you? How is it going to affect the people that the services that you provide benefit? How's your union reacting, et cetera, et cetera. So, give me your response to any and all of those prompts that you want.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, at least on a personal level, I was fortunate enough to keep my job over this past week, but a lot of folks at the NIH weren't so fortunate. And as we well know, the intention behind all these cuts is not efficiency. It's not a good faith effort to give Americans the most bang for their buck of their tax money. Really, it's just a strategy to cause disorientation and chaos among the federal workforce. And what that means for researchers at the NIH, and not just researchers at the NIH, but all of the other important roles at the NIH, is that I worry that it could have this chilling effect on scientific research, right? I mentioned earlier in my call that, the problems that we try to solve at the NIH are really complicated, and they take years and years of many, many people's time to make any sort of progress towards cures or therapies for some of the diseases that we study. And my concern is that, with the chaos and disorientation that these unlawful terminations are causing, is that it will cause scientists to go, well, why bother? Why should I be the one to take on a multi-year project that will end up advancing Alzheimer's research? Why should I be the one to take on this huge, ambitious goal of solving type 1 diabetes when you don't know if the next person might come in and then just cut your job? And so that's one of my primary concerns about all of this, is that the hostility that's being shown towards federal workers right now is going to have this chilling effect on federally funded research, because people won't take on long-term ambitious projects if they don't know that the money's going to be there in a couple of years.
Exactly. And I was just having this conversation. I can't remember who I was having it with most recently, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people about how much of a waste it is that so many of the brightest minds in our country are working on things like how to make sure that there's enough air in a cheese puff that makes you want one more, right? Or people going into financial services and doing all of this kind of stuff. When obviously, like nobody would agree that, like, the scientists who work for Frito-Lay are doing the most kind of socially valuable thing they could be doing with their mind. But those types of jobs in the corporate world pay the most amount of money. You're going to make more money doing that than you would, presumably, working for the National Institute of Health. I'm sure that you've had kind of conversations with people as you're going through your education who may be going into those sorts of fields. And so, providing the kind of bare minimum security and foundation and economic, floor for people who do this kind of socially valuable research is the only way that we can keep at least some of our brightest minds doing something socially valuable, rather than making the most amount of money possible that they can. And so I guess I read from a press release of the UAW. What are some of the things that the UAW is doing to fight for their members and for the NIH generally?
Yeah, and so we're fortunate to be partnered up with the UAW, and luckily they're filing a lawsuit on our behalf, along with several other federal government unions. I would list them off the top of my head, but I don't want to leave any out. So
Sure.
It's the UAW in combination with a number of other federal government unions that are suing the administration and HHS over these cruel, unjust, and frankly unlawful terminations. But at least on the more local scale, it's great to have legal support from UAW International, but on the local scale, we've really just started organizing, right? Like that's what we had to do. We had to get boots on the ground. So we are actually joining in on this February 19th National Day of Action for saving our services. And one of the ways that we're doing that is that we're actually hosting a rally in front of the Health and Human Services building on the 19th as part of this Save Our Services National Day of Action. And we reached out to our academic colleagues because science is a community, right? The research that gets done on the NIH campus in Bethesda affects the researchers at UC Berkeley, which affects the researchers at Harvard, which affects the researchers at University of Michigan. It's really it's a nationwide problem, all of these issues at the NIH. So we reached out to our union researcher colleagues around the DC area at the University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins, George Washington, and more. And we're going to get all of us out to the HHS building on February 19th to protest some of these horrible changes to the NIH.
Right. All right. Well, Matt with UAH or the UAW's NIH Fellows Union, thank you so much for taking the time to call in. Was there anything else that you wanted to make sure that you left us with before we let you go?
No, just for any federal workers out there, know that you're not alone. It's been a tough couple weeks, but we're all fighting for each other here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.